I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you are on the lifeboat. Give me 1 second, people. All right. So, about 20 minutes ago, I was at I was at my festival, the watch show, antique show, until 20 minutes ago, at which time, we had been loading up for about 10 minutes before then, and I know you don't tune in to hear all about my personal life, but this is kind of relevant. So first let me get this muted so that we don't hear a bunch of sounds. Let's see. Mark Wages is getting pictures done with the family, and this had been set up a while in advance. He gave me plenty of time's notice, and so I was ready to roll on this, except for the watch show. Good to see everybody. Charlie, how are you? Miss V, Leisure, Alan Ballantyne, my brother. Thanks for the prayers. So, I talked yesterday about Joanna. Good to see you. Blue, good to see you. I am the Noise Opera. We got the whole crew. So, I talked yesterday about, hello, Equus, the stress level of trying to put all of this stuff together and do it in a kind of a truncated period of time. And yesterday, nothing went right. We weren't prepared. So this morning, I got up really early so that we could go and take care of this and get everything set up. And as I said, 7th, good to see you. As I said yesterday, if you're stressed out, you take it to its final conclusion, right? Run with the stress. Play it out in your head. So I spent a decent amount of time yesterday planning that, this show could be a bomb. I could lose the money that I put up to be in it, which isn't a fortune, but it's money. This could happen. And if it does, it's not the end of the world. And we killed it. We had a great show. The first day was better than the entire last show. So we sold a lot of watches, met a lot of people, and it was great. The only stress part was that I knew I had to get back here, and so I had to leave a little early there, and trying to get home in time. People literally, this is the first time I have sat down since probably 5:30 this morning, and it's just been sort of out straight. So if I look greasy, I apologize. But if you saw the thumbnail tonight, if it seems like we've been talking about this subject a lot, it's because things continue to change on it. And when that happens, we have to talk about it. So we're rapidly closing in. Wages World, the lifeboat, maybe send out a blast. Yeah, you know what? That wouldn't be bad. If you guys want to share this, I'm sure that Mark is going to be sharing it. But people, we're closing in on 1 million. 1 million overdose deaths. And that is just from opiates since this opioid epidemic started. I think those numbers are low. I don't believe them. That's just the truth of the matter is I don't believe them. But even with their numbers, we're approaching 1 million people who have died. Brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, kids, our kids. And because of the large numbers, because of people like Seventh Son, and all of you that have stepped up to the plate and started to call and write letters and do all of these things, the mainstream media is now talking about this, and they're talking about it a lot. Politicians are now addressing this, and they're talking about it a lot. They're starting to fear that they might not get elected if they don't at least pay a lot of lip service to this. And no one on this planet hasn't. I do look pasty. I'll probably use a little food, Blue. But it's coming soon, I promise. They may be paying it lip service, but they're going to have to pay the fiddler when these elections are over. If politicians don't do something about this, we're to the point where everybody's life has been touched by this. We all know someone. Right? Everybody knows somebody who has a son or a daughter or a significant other. I told you the horror story from yesterday about the girl that took one of these pills, thinking it was going to be the same thing that she got in a prescription for oral surgery after having her molars taken out and died. These stories are everywhere, and there's some changes going on. Now, because everybody is beating the drum the way we have been for a long time, there's some research coming out. And we all know that south of the border, this is really coming through, right? That's where we're seeing a lot of this stuff coming from. They're getting it from the big red beast from the east. You know who I'm talking about, right? That's who's manufacturing the lion's share of it. But supply and demand being what it is, other countries now are getting in on the action. Sad to say, but India, the country of India, is now manufacturing a ton of Fent, and they are sending it over here as well. And we're starting to, the fact that that information comes out is depressing, but the fact that they're researching where it's coming from and doing something about it, at least in terms of identifying the players involved, says a lot about what's going on. It has to go farther, people. If you are getting involved in this, if you are, I know, oh great is right. If you're starting to beat the drum like the rest of us, if you're starting to try to make people aware of what's going on, our government needs to take this to the next level. There's blood on a lot of people's hands in this, and we've talked about this before. I just found out that it's going through our mobile home park. The sheriff warning all of us not to let kids accept any food or drink from anyone. Good Lord. This is where we are at, people. I mean, honestly, if you don't see this as an attack on not just our country, but on just the Western way of life, if you don't see that they are targeting free countries as if we are all the enemy, and instead of using weapons that require black powder and lead, they're using chemical weapons, and they're using chemical weapons in a way that get people addicted and then send over poison. But some of this blood lies on big pharma, and I've talked about this before, but the more that I deep dive into this and the more I do research, oddly enough, the family that really had the largest hand in the oxy epidemic, right? That same family got rich back in the day when we started to transition from barbiturates as a way to treat stress, as a way to treat people who were having a tough time sleeping. I mean, they were writing prescriptions for phenobarbital, Seconal, Tuinol, methaqualone, right? Quaaludes was the most prescribed drug in the entire world, even though there was no reason to prescribe it. That was stamped out in the 80s. But the family that made all of the money when that sort of got eliminated, we went to benzodiazepines, right? That would be your Valium, your Xanax, right? All of those, Ativan, all of those tranquilizer drugs that have become very, very popular and are written for anxiety, for depression, for all kinds of reasons. They got rich on Valium primarily. The first drug, by the way, ever advertised. We take for granted now that drugs are advertised in this country because we see them all the time. We see them at football games, right? Super Bowl's going on, half of the commercials are going to be for drugs. Crazy, right? One of only 2 countries in the world that does this. It's us and it's New Zealand. And no other country allows it because it doesn't make any sense. You can't buy the drug, but they advertise to us as if we could just go buy it. You need something for your restless leg syndrome. So now instead of going into a doctor's office and saying, let me tell you what's happening, doc. When I lay down at night, my legs start doing this one, and I kind of feel, anxious at certain times. We walk in the door and go, hey, I need that stuff for restless leg syndrome. It's called, whatever. Or I need Zyprexa. Or I need Viagra. Or I need whatever. But the family that started this, they started it with Valium, and they got really, really rich, telling an awful lot of lies. Telling a ton of lies, right? If this sounds familiar, it should. Because this was the blueprint for what happened with the oxy epidemic. The first one was Valium, and they told people, can't get addicted to it, can't overdose on it, all the same kind of lies. And they got in trouble. They paid some fines, right? Their name got tarnished. And then they went and laid in the cut for about 10, maybe 20 years. And then they came back. and they tried to convince people that a drug that was much stronger than drugs that they already had, right? They had made hydrocodone, but they wanted people to believe that Oxy, which is considerably stronger, when put into an extended release formula, which was a process called Contin, right? And now you could have anything released in the Contin method. Don't do that, kitty. The Contin method is just taking drugs and stacking layers on top of it. So as your stomach acid starts burning off that outside layer, you get a certain amount of drugs into the system. Squirrel, you get a certain amount of drugs into the system. The next step is, good girl, there you go. So as more of your stomach acid eats away the next level, more of the drug is released. You understand the concept? They made it so that it would take a very long time for the coating on this drug to dissolve. And during that time, you would be getting a dose evenly throughout an 8-hour period of time. We know that didn't work, right? It didn't work because of people like me. Because what do? We cut the coating off of the outside. We crushed it up. And now she is the star of the show, Major. There's no question. Now you took 8 to 12 hours worth of drugs and dumped it on your system all at once. Now, when you take a Percocet, you're taking what? 5. Percocet 5s, you might be able to get Percocet 7 5s. If you're taking a hydrocodone, you're taking a 5, a 7 5, or a 10. You take an OxyContin, you're taking 80 milligrams, right? 80 milligrams. Well, you think, take 80 milligrams, divide it by 8 hours, right? So you're getting what, 10 milligrams an hour? No, not if you crush it up. You're getting 80 milligrams all at once. You are overloading the crap out of the receptors in your brain, and you're causing a level of addiction that people can't wrap their brain around. Now, the scariest part is you have to understand how this works. They get a patent, right, for this great technology, and they are allowed to recoup a ton of money to pay for the research and development that went into that drug. So they already had a Contin drug, but it was hydrocodone, time released. They already had it. Yet they had a very long patent given them for making OxyContin, which was just Oxy in the exact same formula. There was no research and development done for this. None. This is a hustle. Now, as you get right up to the finish line, you change the drug this much, and you can extend the patent. So then they add a little more acetaminophen, and they extend the patent. Or they add a little more of this, and it became the most profitable drug in history. Now, how do you make that happen? You give sales representatives an unlimited budget. Seriously, $25,000, $30,000 a month to go wine and dine doctors. To go take them out to dinner. Now, you can't pay a doctor. The law in this country says you can't pay a doctor to write prescriptions for you. That's illegal, right? And it should be. If you show up and go, hey, I'll give you $25,000 if you write a bunch of prescriptions for this new drug we got because we really want it to take off, right? That's illegal. But I can say, I really want to talk to you about this new drug that we've just developed that isn't addicting and really helps people. There's a very low threshold for abuse. There's a very low chance of any kind of overdose. It's one of the safest things we've ever made. I would like to tell you about it, but we're going to be doing it in the Bahamas. So I'm going to need you down there for about a week. Bring your wife. Yeah, you can bring your kids too. That's fine. Well, what's the difference? Seriously, what's the difference if I give you $25,000 or I give you a $25,000 vacation? Right? Leisure said, the insurance companies took me off Oxy. They did the same thing to me, brother. I was getting 12 a day. 12 OxyContin 80s a day from a doctor. This was a prescription. This was legitimate. And when the insurance company realizes they're paying $50 to $60 a piece for these things because they had to recoup all this money, right? So they're allowed to charge anything they want. There's no competition because there's no generic. The generic doesn't happen until the patent runs out. So now you've got all of these people blowing all of this cash, pushing a drug that they know. Their research was telling them early on in the game that this stuff was killing people. Hold on one second. people, because my laptop is not here, so I need to do something really quickly. I really appreciate your patience. So kind of you. Have I been growing out my mustache? You know something? Not intentionally. I think it's just one of those things that, it's been rolling, and yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So what happened to me is they said, we're no longer going to give you 12 80 milligram capsules a day. We can't pay for that. Plain and simple. Those tablets are too expensive. I said, so what happens now? Well, there's other drugs we can put you on that are considerably cheaper and your insurance company is willing to pay for. And I said, what drugs are we talking about? Well, we're recommending methadone. If you know anything about methadone, it's not a great drug for long-term pain treatment unless you plan on taking it forever, right? It's very difficult to get off if you're taking it. It's one thing if you're taking it as a cessation tool. If you're using it to try to get, if you're trying to, ease off of it. But if you're doing it for pain management, you're just going to keep taking more. Survival game, it is great to see you. You're going to just keep taking more and keep taking more. And it builds up in your system because the half-life of that drug lasts forever. So believe it or not, people, for any of you who have abused opiates before, they wanted to give me 300 milligrams of methadone a day in tablets, which I sold to buy heroin. And going to a pain specialist, and the best of intentions, really trying to take care of some very serious health problems. Took me from a guy who had experimented with a lot of drugs to a full-blown drug addict willing to steal, lie, or do whatever in order to continue to get the drug. So this is a story that happened to everybody. The crazy thing is, what happens to these companies? Well, the government comes in and they say, you're going to have to pay a fine for what you've done, right? Hello, Tommy Bird. Your kids like being on 2 bottles of Stadol a day. A lot of people don't know what Stadol is. It's a kind of a rare pain medication, but you usually spray it up your nose. It's a very strong pain med as well. But so now you had all of these companies getting filthy rich, and the government comes in and says, you're going to pay a fine. You realize it doesn't matter how big that fine is. It doesn't. The amount of money they made, they'll write a check. And we're going to keep it out of court as long as possible. I don't mean the battle. I mean how long before they have to pay. And what do you think happens while those things are not in court? I'll tell you what happens. Lobbyists, right? Lobbyists for these companies go to Washington, D.C., and they start spending unlimited amounts of money. And instead of spending it on doctors, they spend it on politicians. I know I can't give you more than $4,000 for your re-election campaign because that's illegal. However, we're going to make a contribution of $5 million to a political action committee, right, that we're going to set up. And that PAC is going to help you get elected. And we would like to talk to you about this, but what do you say we do it in France or Switzerland? And the crap just keeps going. And people keep getting paid off, and the same thing continues to happen, and 900,000 people, according to their math, 900,000 people are dead. 900,000, right? 9/11 was 3,000 people. Vietnam was 59,000 or somewhere in there. 1 million people. 1 million write-offs, right? Scum of the earth. Who cares? Junkies, right? Drug addicts, losers, us. And unfortunately, now that everybody seems to want to get involved and really start pushing this, mainstream media, politicians, what do you do for all of the families of these people that have lost loved ones? And now they're going like this. This isn't our fault, right? This stuff is coming from the beast from the east, and it's coming through Mexico. It's got nothing to do with us. Big Pharma didn't make this. No, you just made us drug addicts, right? People that went in with car wrecks. People that went in with, honestly, women went in with really bad menstrual cramps and got put on Oxy. They were writing prescriptions for Oxy for everything because they were telling doctors, no matter what you're giving a patient, this is safer. Well, normally I do a really low dose, even like a Tylenol 3 with codeine, because I find that, no. Codeine, dangerous drug. Read the Porter Glick study. Okay? It says that this is the safest painkiller we have ever made. You got nothing to worry about. Right? Then they enslaved all of these people who shouldn't have ever even been experimenting. These weren't drug addicts. Seriously. Doctors, lawyers, normal people. You're right. Food addiction is just as bad and it's legal. Food addiction is absolutely awful. And there are people who are definitely pulling strings to make food more addicting. There really are. But while it takes people out over a long period of time and it cuts down on people's quality of life, it's not knocking 300 people a day out of the United States, right? This poison is killing 300 people a day, if you believe what they're saying. And I promise you, people, we've been right every single time we have said this. They're not even close. They're not even close. We're going to get to a point where that 900,000 number, we're going to hit it about every 3 or 4 years. We're so behind right now to try to get this under control. Now, we have a distribution network already set up just south of the border that makes more money than half of the companies in the Fortune 500. They have unbelievable chains of distribution set up. And you know what? Go ahead and hate me. People come across the border and they get sent to all of these different places and they set up a cell, and that's exactly what they're called, is cells. You go to the methadone clinic in town, read a book. There is a beautiful book written about this, tells you the entire thing. It's called Dreamland. But the person goes into town, goes right to the methadone clinic, sits out in front of the methadone clinic and waits as people comes out. And they find one that looks vulnerable and they call them over and say, hey, I just want you to give my number out to some people that are getting high. I will get you all the free dope you want. I'll give you a couple of $100 a week to live on, and the more people to buy, the more dope I'm going to give you. And when a drug addict takes that phone number, they say, hey, give this to your friends. And if your friend makes a phone call in, the next time I see you, I'll give you 2 bags. How long do you think that takes to flood a town? To flood a town. And we send them to every corner of this country. There are cells in Vermont. This is a state that didn't know that crack or heroin or any of these things existed. It was like Mayberry RFD until, 10 years ago. And now it is the second fastest growing state in the union for heroin abuse and overdose deaths. Great. So the fact that they're waking up, that's good. It really is. It's great that people are starting to talk about it. But you watch people, they are going to, you are going to see some really vicious finger pointing. They're going to look for a ton of people to blame this on. And they are not going to blame it on the people who have the most blood on their hands. Big Pharma dumps so much money onto the politicians in this country that we're not going to hear anything about them. Our country had such a hand in this. It's incredible. And I'm sorry, I love my country. I really do. But they allowed this stuff. The Food and Drug Administration, this is a true story, people. You can research this. Right at the end of the run that they had on the first cotton drug, they met at midnight with a gentleman from the FDA who literally wrote out their next application for them for the change of the cotton drug to the OxyContin drug. Right at the end of the road. This extended their contract longer, and it flooded the world with that garbage. The Food and Drug Administration turned the opposite way. because of how much money politicians were getting paid by all of these companies. And then once they got the entire drug community just thoroughly addicted to this stuff, and a lot of victims who weren't drug addicts completely addicted to this stuff, the government steps in and says, you can't write any more prescriptions for this. Right? This is out of control. From now on, you can't write a prescription for this stuff unless somebody is dying of cancer. Well, what do you do for all of those people that you've been writing prescriptions for the last 6 years? What do you do? Well, they go and they stop buying heroin. That's what happens. They go to the street. And if they don't want to do heroin, because heroin, I mean, it's heroin, right? They just want to do these pills that they were getting safely from their pharmacy. Well, those pills were $80 a piece. Right? Yeah. It's a really, really awful situation. And I just saw a comment that said, what can we do? Heroin is a name brand. Yeah, not anymore. It was a name brand of the Bayer company, right? They took morphine and they changed it into diacetylmorphine. And what it did was it allowed morphine to pass through the blood-brain barrier faster. So you got the exact same effect as you would have gotten from morphine, but heroin was a faster acting drug in the body than morphine, and this made it a more efficient painkiller. However, it also made it really, really sort of, it was very opportunistic for abuse and for addiction. It happened way, way too quickly. So Bayer kind of abandoned it. But the genie was out of the bottle, because by now, like everything else, right, people in the world developed a taste for this drug. It was being written for prescriptions. You could buy it in the Sears catalog. Sears and Roebuck sold heroin by Bayer. Hey, squirrel. So once all those people got addicted, what did the government do? It passed the Narcotic Law of 1933, or maybe it was 1930. The Narcotic Act said that in order for a drug to be a narcotic, it had to be life-threatening in overdose quantities. It had to be addicting, right? There were all of these criteria that needed to be met. And they made them all illegal and created a black market. And created a black market worth killing for. When you make something that valuable, right, people are going to kill one another for it. It's sad, but it's true. They'll kill each other for territory to sell it. Hey, Zip, come here. Come here. They will do everything within their power, right, to gain control over certain markets, because this is now a very, very profitable substance. So what started out as a name brand, the genie got out of the bottle, and people learned that, oh, I can take the poppy plant and I can turn it into this. It's a pretty simple recipe, really, in order to make this happen. And that's what took place. And this has happened with everything, right? Meth didn't start out a street drug, right? Meth was not a street drug. Gamma hydroxybutyrate, GHB, it's a party drug. You can make it with 3. She is a beautiful cat. She really is. She's a pistol, but she's a really beautiful cat. But GHB can be made with 3 ingredients, people. Like, this is it's not a difficult thing to make. But once the recipe gets out online, the name brand thing kind of goes to the wind, right? Things are about to get hard. I believe that. I really do. I think that there's a lot of really ugly stuff coming, and we tend to focus on. We're myopic with a lifeboat. It's really not an anti-drug channel as much as it's an anti-addiction channel. There are people out there that smoke a joint or whatever. I don't care about any of that. I really don't. People out there that have a couple of beers, I don't care about that. If the drug owns you, if you can't get through a day without it, if it is making your life worse, then that's an issue. And we stay fairly focused on that. Now, I like the advice of not panicking. If you think some things are going to happen in the future, go check out Rip Curl Readiness, right? Go check out Survival Game. There are a lot of people that are really able to help you on that. Cemetery. This this episode of The Lifeboat has been sponsored by more cowbell. I got a funny story, and I know this is me squirreling, but I have to do it. So Mark and I are doing a project that is going to take place over on Wages World, and I needed to purchase a sextant. Right? It's an old sailor's tool, and so it's sold at a really bizarre place that just sells the weirdest stuff in the entire world. And when we went there to buy it, they weren't in stock. So they kept telling us, me and my partner, you got to come back. So we went back a week later, still wasn't there. So we got to come back. And finally, I walked through the door and the guy goes, hey, we got it. It's over on aisle whatever. So I went over to the aisle and there was the sextant. And when I reached down to get it, I grabbed it and I turned around and I started to leave. And my partner goes, is that all you need? We had talked about this 300 times. I said, yeah. The only thing we came in here for was a sextant. You know why? Right next to the sextant apparently were cowbells. Right? It's a very odd story. But he picked it up and shook it. And he's like, because you could always use a little bit more cowbell. And we laughed for probably 20 minutes. And I said, I ought to buy that. You know what I mean? It might be a $15 joke, but it would be so worth it. Because, you can never have enough cowbell. Thank you, Cemetery. That was funny as heck and very generous. I really, really appreciate that. You know what? It's going to be very lucky if Squirrel comes back to get in the vest, because she really does run the show. It is the way it is. A question was asked. What can we do? What can we do about this? And it's the best thing that you can do is not believe that you can't do anything. Right? Please understand what I'm saying. Because so often when what we're facing seems overwhelming or seems bigger than anything, and it feels like the entire world is involved, and we're talking about trillions of dollars. Can you wrap your brain around $1 trillion? Cemetery, thank you, brother. You're a funny guy. If you took $1 trillion $1 bills and you started stacking them, they'd go to the moon and back. Right? Look that up. I'm not playing. Ridiculous. $1 trillion? But that's what we're talking about. This is the kind of money. So I know people go, what can a little guy like me do? I'll tell you what you can do. You want to make a difference? Here's what you can do. Sit down tonight, get a legal pad, and write down every single person that you care about. I'm not kidding. You got a niece, you got a nephew, you got a son, you got a daughter, you got anybody your age, anybody 5 to 10 years older than you, anybody you know that has any chance whatsoever on God's green earth of ever doing a drug, and you make them listen to you. That's what you do. You make them listen to you. And you say things like, it isn't a matter of saying no to fentanyl, right? What idiot is going to go, oh yeah, you got fentanyl? Right, with everything that's going on in the news. Yeah, you got fent? Give me some. I'll try some. Put a big pile there on the table. I think I'll snort it. No, the stuff is pressed into pills that look like other things, right? You have to continue to beat the drum for anybody you care about. Is it too big an issue to change the entire world? Maybe. But if you could stop the 5 most important people in your life from ever dying on this stuff, that might be good enough, right? You don't want to see everyone else die. But be honest. If you could just make sure that the people in your sphere of influence, 5, 10 people, whatever, the people you love the most, if you could keep them safe, can you imagine if everybody in America took that advice? Right? If everybody in America just did that, said, screw everything else, I'm just going to talk nonstop to the 10 people that I love the most, and make sure that they're going to get tired of hearing this. Hey, there she is. Good girl. So, one person at a time, T. Prada says. Right. One person at a time. To all of them who will listen, whether they want to or not. And when they give, I know about that. No, you know what? Knock that off. Seriously, listen to me. This is life or death. Do you understand? Tamara, thank you. Really appreciate that. It's life or death stuff. You're not going to blow me off. And you're not going to say, yeah, you know what? No, I know all about that. You do? Good. Tell me about it. Tell me everything you know. because this is life or death. It really is. That tragedy that happened yesterday. And one whose addiction was food. You're not a party pooper at all. I don't think that's... And we do shows on the food addiction. It is the largest addiction in the world. It is, without a shadow of a doubt, the largest addiction in the world. Everyone I knew walked away because I didn't do drugs. Funny how that works. You know what? Thank God you didn't. Now, the addiction to food is no different. The addiction to porn is no different. Once you understand the mechanism of addiction, it really doesn't matter. And you find a lot of times that people who are addicted to certain substances, they make a good joke about it in the movie Half-Baked. Bob Saget, there's a scene in there that's kind of funny where he goes, the guy goes to rehab and says, well, I'm in here for weed. And the entire place just mocks him. I don't care what you're addicted to. My addiction was heroin. Do I think if you're addicted to food, that's less of an addiction? No, I don't. I really don't. I think if the reward center of your brain jumps off the track, right? I think that if the autonomic, that system of the brain puts you into fight or flight all day long, so that the only way that you can feel like you're not losing it is to eat something, or to watch porn, or to do whatever it is you're doing. Right? It's the exact same thing. It really is. And by the way, I hate it. Right? I don't hate weed. I don't care. I don't hate alcohol. I hate what any of these things do to somebody once it gets past that point. And you think you're a party pooper? Good Lord, you know what happens when Captain Tommy shows up at a place? Hide the weed. You know what I mean? Don't pull out a beer. The captain's right. Right? Everyone just assumes that the last thing in the world, I'm the last guy in the world you'd want around any of that. But look, I don't care. If someone's doing something and they're in control, but it's a pretty simple litmus test, right? Can you stop? And I don't mean theoretically, because you always hear people, I stop whenever I want. Yeah, you just haven't wanted in 6 years? How's that work? No, can you stop? Has the substance you're on made your life worse? Has the substance that you're on cost you friends or family? Right? You start going through that checklist. If you're answering yes to those things, guess what? You're addicted. And you're going to end up in a very bad situation, whether it's food, whether it's booze, regardless of what it is, right? We are all in the same boat. If you just got here, that's how this started, right? The conversation, we would say every night, right? In the early days of what was called the Tommy Scoville Show, and I hated that name from Jump Street. I really did not like that name. I didn't want the show to be about me. But from the very beginning, we talked about, I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're smoking weed or snorting coke or eating too much, right? Or watching porn all day or any of these things. We're all in the same boat. And that just sort of continued until, people started, and then they went with the captain thing and tell people your problems here. We're all in the same boat. Boy, communication is a really beautiful thing. Points of connection, right? If you're brand new here, we have a theory that we talk about very often, that the opposite of addiction is connection. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It isn't. It's connection. Because when you're in addiction, whether you're in a room with 65 people, right, or you're eating alone, right, or whatever you're doing, whether you're drinking alone or drinking in a bar, right, you're alone. Whether you're shooting heroin with 6 people, or you're doing it alone in a restroom at a McDonald's, you're alone. Because once you start doing that, everything in your life gets shoved to the side. I started to do drugs in the hope that my sister would see me using, feel bad, and stop using herself. She never stopped. You know what? If you think that story is unique, people, I wish I had $1 for every time somebody said to me, I did this just to help my brother quit. I figured if I started doing it with him, And I found out what was going on. I've seen this happen so many times with so many people. It's a story that gets told over and over again, best of intents, right? Best intent. But very often what happens is either neither of you are going to quit, or they end up quitting and you get, addicted and stuck in it. One of the things that with addiction, people, is that it is a disease, and it's not a disease that everybody has. This might not make sense to people, right? So follow me on this. You can do heroin until you're physically addicted to it, whether you have the disease of drug addiction or not. You can do heroin until you're addicted, right? Do heroin every day for about 7 days. On day 8, you're going to need it. It's that simple. The difference is the person with the disease will say, I got to stop doing this. This is awful, right? I'm addicted to this stuff. I'm just going to get sick for 4 or 5 days and tough this out, and I'm going to change my life, and I'm going to move on. It's the exact same thing the guy who does not have the disease of addiction is going to say. One of them will actually do that, right? The person that is not a drug addict is going to quit that substance, and then they're going to go, I'm never doing that again. Holy crap, was that stupid, right? That was the dumbest thing I ever did in my life. Hey, Wages, take care of yourself, brother. I love you. That's the dumbest thing I ever did. I'm never doing that again. And his friend will not be able to do that. On day 2, he'll use it again. They'll say the pain's too much, right? The withdrawals are too much. I can't do it. And I'm not picking on anybody. I said that for 30 years, right? But it's not the pain. It's the pain. It's the fact that this becomes your coping mechanism. This becomes your vagus nerve, right? This becomes the relaxation. This becomes God, right? For real. All of the things. Do you think if someone who doesn't have the disease could bring it on by prolonged use? Absolutely. It's sort of been proven out that someone without the disease can absolutely get addicted. They have a much better chance of quitting and then literally walking away. Like I said, if I don't care who you are, if you do heroin every day for a month and a half, you're addicted. Right? Now, if you did heroin every day for 3 or 4 years, yeah, you will develop the disease of addiction. However, your brain will still show up different on a PET scan than someone who has definitive drug addiction. The 2 brain scans are different. Even if one person, if they're living the same life, one has a different brain. Now, will they be able to just walk away? I don't know. I can't answer that. I think that the odds of them quitting are considerably better than the guy with the bad PET scan. You, me, the rest of us. But you hear people all the time, especially if their habit is very accepted by society. If it's eating, or if it's drinking, or any of those things that society accepts, you'll hear people say, I love food. I wish I could just eat 2 or 3 slices of pizza, but when I start, I'm going to crush an entire pie, and it's just kind of how it works. And you'll hear people with an alcohol drinking disorder who will say, man, I would be so happy if I could just have 2 beers, And I don't know, you kind of ask yourself, why? Is the flavor so fantastic that having those 2 is just going to make life absolutely awesome? Or is it just that you have romanticized this stuff so much in your mind that you simply, can't walk away, and it's your best friend? I remember being very, very sad at the realization that I was never going to be able to do heroin again. And when I first quit, it was much easier for me to go with the I can't do it today. I wanted to leave open the possibility that maybe somewhere down the line I might be able to, Oh, thank you, Noise Opera. I love you, brother. Really, really appreciate that. I think it was Misty Dragon. It was going by fast because you guys are chatting quick. But I believe it was you that said carbs. If you do any kind of research into this, most people with a food addiction, right? That's almost everybody, right? Because if you look at what carbs do in the body and in the brain, it's so damn similar to drugs. It's incredible, right? I mean, you eat carbs and you get that, you really do. You get a full rush of brain chemicals. And the sad thing is, once you really start to understand the entire concept, that, I'll get back to that weed thing because that's a good comment. But once you start to understand the concept of the addictive process and you realize what's going on in the brain, what's going on when it starts to, flood you with this chemical, it's your body literally is telling him, your mind is literally telling your body, if you don't get these carbs, we're going to die. No joke, right? This is a part of the system, right? That has made, it's there to make us believe that when this chemical comes on, it's only coming on for one reason, right? This is our own drugs created in our own brain. These are only flushed into us for one reason, because whatever we're doing right now is so damned important that our body needs to really hammer home how important it is. They hand you your child. Right? The chemicals come on and you think, I got to take care of this thing for the rest of my life. She's so beautiful. This is perfect. Right? Without that chemical, it's a small thing yelling, right? Screaming, defecating on itself. Right? I mean, without that instant bond and that love, you'd be like, yeah, loud as hell, get rid of that. Boy, how did I get into this? But you are instantly bonded because it is the largest dump of that chemical you're ever going to have. And if you look at it on a scale from, say, 1 to 100, right, that's going to be about 90, right? Units of this stuff coming into your body. And you can actually look it up. I'm throwing these numbers out for illustration purposes, but there are studies done where you can actually look this up. Now go do meth, and it's going to be at about a 130, right? So it's going to send chemicals down more than it would when the doctor hands you your child. Just say no, right? Just walk away. How hard could it be? Just walk away. Let me see here. I used to drink I used to drink over 180 units per day. Now I'm down to 16 units. Sometimes more, but I'm really proud of myself because I've actually done it myself. Good for you. Good for you. Decreasing is awesome, and it's when you're able to do that, if you can get to the point where it's not controlling you, and it's not, if you can get down to that point, the best thing is take 7 days off, right? You prove to yourself pretty easily that it isn't a dependency issue. If it's a dependency issue, then the choice really becomes up to you. Is it something that, you can be comfortable with for the rest of your life? Or is it something that you think for long term? And I don't make that decision for anybody, but that's usually a pretty good indicator. Miss Dragon says, I cut out potato chips for diet. I didn't know about potassium. I ended up in a cardiac care unit for 3 days. Doc didn't give me potassium with my Lasix water pill. Oh my goodness. It's frightening, right? It really is. It's frightening. Sorry, people, but I spent about, 8 or 9 hours with this thing, and I don't think I left. I don't think I left the little booth. Like, it was sort of running and gunning all day long. Mr. Dragon, are you still working on on this? Is this a situation that you're still working on with? Thank you, T Prada. Is this something that you're still working on with doctors? One of the, yeah, I know, Johnny. Right, same thing. Burning the candle at both ends. People, this is why we say, right, especially if Mark's here and we actually do this right. I'm not a doctor, right? And regardless of what anyone says, I don't even play one on TV. I was called doctor for a while as a sort of a joke on another channel. I told anyone I was a doctor. In fact, it started as me saying, you know what? I've always wanted to be a doctor. It'd be a whole lot easier if everyone just called me doctor, and it kind of took off. Anyway, I'm not a doctor, right? And what we talk about is addiction, and it's the one thing that we have spent a lot of time studying, right? So we feel like we can speak to it. However, before you make any radical changes in your life, right? You go on a really severe diet, or you you start fasting, right? Or you start doing any of these things that could be a shock to your system. If you're going to quit drinking cold turkey, if you're going to quit benzodiazepines, cold turkey, go talk to a doctor before you do any of these things. Do you understand? Even if you do not, if you're not quitting alcohol, if you're not quitting benzos, if you have an opportunity to go talk to a doctor before you embark on whatever you're about to embark on, please do it. Please do it. If it's a situation where you really can't make that happen, then do some research. For God's sakes, don't ever quit alcohol cold turkey. It will kill you. It really will. Now, I don't mean, well, I've been drinking more than 4 or 5 beers a day for a long time, and no. But I mean, if you get to a point, hey, Rhonda, good to see you. She said, oh my God, I quit Klonopin cold turkey. Oh, wow. That is if you don't know, people, Klonopin is clonazepam. And as far as benzos go, benzodiazepines, that's pretty much the top of the food chain in terms of what they will write you a prescription for in this country. There was flunitrazepam, which was Rohypnol, roofies. That was stronger, but as far as like a doctor writing you a prescription, because there was no one getting prescriptions for Rohypnol. So as far as doctors writing prescriptions, that's about the gnarliest thing that you could ever try to quit in that family. So God bless you, Rhonda. I'm glad you're still here. Honestly, that's not a drug. People, if you're on Klonopin, please don't quit cold turkey. I mean, it is, we're really lucky you're here. You're really lucky you're here. Oh, Leslie, good to see you. Glad that you're here. It's awesome. My buddy who passed, the drinker, he tried to stop cold turkey and started, sorry people, but I don't have my laptop. I left that at the show here, so let me see real quickly. My buddy who passed, the drinker, he tried to stop cold turkey and started getting epilepsy. Yeah, I don't know. I've heard this before. I don't know that stopping cold turkey will give you epilepsy. It will certainly give you tonic-clonic, or grand mal seizures, which very much look like epilepsy. And whether or not that can lead to it, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. It's not something I've studied. But I can tell you wholeheartedly that when people die from delirium tremens, when people die from going cold turkey on booze, it absolutely is because they will seize. It causes seizures, and it's really, I say the meat you hit with your car is the best. Cemetery, I'm glad you're here. Mark Wages, good to see you, bud. We miss you. We'll look forward to having Mark back tomorrow. Sorry. Also, I see Rhonda, and I know that Rhonda came over here from the Marfugel family, and we are really blessed that Marf gave us a shout out, put us up on the Friends of Marfugel page. Really an honor, and just a very nice thing to really give the channel a blessing. So much thanks to Marf and Dex and all of the people that have come over. We're really happy you're here. I mean that. Rhonda says, thanks so much. I had to quit because I started having seizures, and they had me out. Wow. Yeah, seizures and meds. I couldn't ever stay awake. My seizures started before I quit Klonopin. You're really lucky to be alive. Benzos and people, this is, again, I'm glad you said this too, Rhonda, because right now, what is happening is a lot of the people bringing the fent in are mixing it with benzos, and they're calling it benzo dope. And I mean, even if you're not a scholar and you're just a guy or a gal who's a street user, there's nobody that doesn't know that if you mix benzos and you mix opiates, the odds of you waking up the next day are really not great. And this is even for people like, I was doing 7 grams of heroin a day. But if somebody said, hey, you want a pill, a Xanax? Hell no. You know what I mean? And I had a tolerance from hell. But we always knew that those were two you don't mix. And God forbid you're a drinker, right? The reason that these are bad combinations is because everyone is a respiratory depressant. right? They all slow down your breathing to the point where if I come and I put my hand over your mouth while you're sleeping, right? You're going to go. There's going to be that moment where your body panics. I need oxygen, right? It's going to snap the head. It's going to do whatever it has to do to clear the airway and to breathe. But when you add 3 respiratory depressants, one on top of the other, it doesn't mean that your breathing is going to slow down to nothing. What it means is you're going to be so damn relaxed that if I went over and I put my hand over your mouth, there's never going to be that. You'll quite simply just go to the other side. It will kill you. So these are the things, what can we do? Well, you can tell everybody that you love that everything right now that comes in a powder or a pill on the street is suspect. In the town that I live in, downtown, you can walk up to a box in a couple of different places, open the door, right? And they'll have bottles of Narcan in there, right, for people who OD. And they'll have fentanyl test strips so that you can absolutely, if the person can't quit, well, then let's get them to test their dope before they do it. And I know that people think, well, you're accepting the drug use, like safe needle exchange programs or giving out fent strips. What you're doing is you're taking a segment of society that only trusts themselves, right? When you're on heroin, the only people you trust are on heroin because there's no one else you can tell anything about your life other than someone else. And if somebody comes up to you who's completely sober and says, hey, I just don't want you to die. If you're going to keep doing this stuff, here's some fentanyl test strips. Here's how they work. And here are some clean needles so you're not sharing with 4 people and you're going to get HIV or Hep C. If you need more, come back. Well, what happens is now they have a point of connection in their life who isn't wasted, right? There's a point of connection in their life who they begin to trust that isn't on drugs. Do you understand the value of that? They make 2 or 3 trips back. They get more test strips. They get, safe injection kits with needles and a little cooker or whatever. And about the 3rd time in, the person says to him, you seem like such a pretty girl. You seem like such a nice guy, right? Are you happy? I mean, is this bumming you out? Is this the life you want to live? Because we'd like to help you. Now, you walk up to somebody on the street who's strung out and say, we want to help you, and they are running, right? They are getting out of Dodge because they're going to think you're a cop, right? But if you can get your foot in the door in any way that is going to take the hardcores, the people who are really in the life, and give them a reason to trust you at any level, I'm for it. I'm sorry. Giving out free dope and all of the things that they're doing north of the border, I don't know. But anything where you can, build a point of connection. I'm sorry, my mustache is driving me nuts. If you can build a point of connection with these people, there really are opportunities to do something. Thank you, Charlie Murphy. Charlie says, leave a comment after the show. People, that helps the algorithm. And I'll tell you something. Do you know the last time that Charlie didn't leave a comment after one of my videos? Neither do I. I mean it. And he's not alone. There is a steady group of people, about 4 or 5 of you, that never miss. I really appreciate it. It helps build the boat bigger. I'm not sure if we hit 2,800. If we didn't, folks, we're really close. And if you think it was like only a week ago when I said, hey, we just hit 2,700, that's because it was a week ago. And we owe that to Marfugel as well. Really thank you, everybody from the Marf fan. I was on the lowest dose of alprazolam. For those who don't know, that would be Xanax. So, let me see here. I was on the lowest dose of alprazolam 4 times a day. 5 milligrams of hydrocodone 4 times a day. Nice doctor. Were you going to a pill mill? Because a real doctor just doesn't do that. I mean, you had to have been going to a pill mill. Thank God you're still here. Suddenly I missed zooming out at work. Yeah, no withdrawals. Wow. Well, thank God you're still alive. Space Diesel says, I'm right with you, Tommy. I've had a rough few days. I need to tighten up and kick off the snow boots. Alcohol is the devil. It leads me to it. You know what? We're not mad at you. We're not. I got big hopes and big dreams for you, dude. You say some of the most beautiful things. You know, you are somebody that cares about other people. You're just really intelligent, heartfelt, articulate stuff when it comes to this disease and this affliction. You are as in tune as anyone I've ever heard. I have big hopes for you, man. I really do. I see you getting sober, and I see you living your best life. And I'm not saying that, to do the Tony Robbins thing. I'm dead serious, man. I think that there's really an awful lot of hope for you, man. I really, really believe that, and I'm glad that you're here. Whether you're here with with a spoon in your nose, I don't care. I just want you here and respectful. And you know what? You always are. You're here and you're respectful. You're a great dude. So, you know what, people? We slip, we fall. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It matters how many times you get up. So if you get knocked down 7 times, just get up 8. It's pretty simple, right? You get knocked down 7 times and you get up 6. Yeah, that's living in life. I'd lived like that for a really long time. And then one day I got up more times than I got knocked down. And I haven't looked back. I really haven't. I got days, that I want to throw things through a wall and say bad words. And there are days I might fling something and say a few bad words. But I'm trying every day. And I'm getting more out of you guys than you're getting out of me. I promise you. This is so good for me. There wasn't a doubt today, no matter what I was doing with this show, that I was going to be here for this. And I kid you not, people, I came running through this door with about 60 seconds to spare and said, plenty of time. Thank you, Noise Opera, man. I really appreciate you. People, we're to the top of the hour, right? So on the way out the door, for me and for Mark and for everybody on the boat, hit the thumbs up. And if you got some time, leave a comment. It really does sort of push this to the next level. And to all of you who faithfully do it every single day, I love you guys. And to all of you who don't, I love you. I really do. But thanks to push the boat out a little further. It really is good stuff. Rhonda, I'm glad that you're here. Everybody that just came over from Marf, great to see you. Glad that you're here. Really happy to have you on the boat. I am Captain Tommy Scoville. Tomorrow, on the other side of the glass, will be Mark Wages. And, of course, the star of the show. What's she doing? Uh-oh. Stunts. That's a cat in the basket. Good night, everybody. We love you.